Hey guys, what is up and welcome to finally a new League of Myths episode. As I'm sure you can guess, this one is going to be featuring Aurelion Sol. So as usual, if you end up enjoying this one, make sure to hit that like button. But without much further ado, let's go right into the first myth. One of the more popular questions asked, will Yasuo or Braum be able to block Aurelion Sol's passive or his W ability? So starting things off with Yasuo's wind wall first, as he throws it out, my passive is able to go right through the wind wall and still damage the champion. But as we turn on the W and try this one more time, it still goes right through it, hitting the Yasuo without any issues. Alright, well, does this have any different interactions with Braum's shield? And other than the fact that he does absorb the first hit, it still goes right through it. And for demonstrational purposes, also testing this with Aurelion Sol's W on, again, the exact same thing happens. The next question is asking, how big can you make his Q grow? So without question, this has to be one of the more fun things to do with Aurelion Sol, just really seeing how big you can make the Q become. And in this example, I waited till 20 minutes, got the home guard effect, got a lot of move speed items, and went from the corner of my base all the way to the corner of the enemy team's base. And well, I feel like it's somewhat self-explanatory that the size of the Q can become quite large. I don't think you can make it any bigger than I do in the video because I'm going from one point of the map all the way to the other side. But obviously a very cool thing to look at, obviously you can get it to be quite large. The next myth is a little bit of a bonus one, mainly just for fun. So it's essentially asking, can Yasuo and Braum block Aurelion's Q even when it's in a very large state? So the first example, we have Aurelion Sol with a massive Q going right at the wind wall, but it stops right in front of it, kind of anticlimactic. And in the second example, we also tested with Braum's shield.
Fair.
That was so anticlimactic. Oh my god, it just like... Moving along to the next one, what happens if Kalista ults or Tahm Kench W's Aurelion Sol when he's in his E form, and what happens with his passive? Alright, so we start things off by having an allied Tahm Kench use his W on me, and you can see my passive is still spinning around and it's still able to hit enemy champions. But I wasn't able to make my W bigger while being inside Tahm Kench. So in this example, I start with my W on and it works the exact same way, except this time I can bring it back in. But what if the Tahm Kench that eats me is an enemy Tahm Kench? Will it then disable my passive? And as it just so happens in this video, the answer to that is yes, it does. Next, we tested to see if Tahm Kench can eat Aurelion Sol from the sky. Now as I fly over using my E ability, the allied Tahm Kench waiting for me is going to be getting ready to activate his W. And just as I get in range, he uses it and he can easily take me right out of the sky. However, we couldn't make this work with an enemy Tahm Kench, because Aurelion Sol loses the stacks on his E whenever he takes damage. And last but definitely not least, let's test it to see what happens if Kalista ults Aurelion Sol. And as I'm sure most of you have already guessed, the interaction is very similar to that of Tahm Kench. My passive will still spin around Kalista and it never actually cancels out. So we've got some pretty interesting synergy between champions. But let's move on to the next question, which is asking, will Silence or Azania's effect also make Aurelion Sol lose his passive? So first off, if you're not aware, if Aurelion Sol ever loses control of his character, well, he's gonna be losing his passive as well for that duration. And when testing that with Soraka here, you're gonna be seeing that her silence is also enough to make me lose the passive as I'm within the silence area. However, if you were to use Zhonya's Hourglass, it actually doesn't cancel your passive and it still spins around you, which can be quite deadly in a teamfight. But then if we were to test this using Bard's ultimate, keep in mind this one is an enemy Bard, the second he uses the ultimate on me, which acts pretty much just like Azania's effect would, well, as you see in this example, I actually do lose my passive for the duration of his ultimate. But interestingly enough, if the Bard that uses his ultimate is actually on my team, then it doesn't have the same effect and my passive will still be spinning. So a lot of small information here and there to keep in mind whenever you're playing this dragon champion. But speaking of Bard, this next question is asking, can you still use his passive or W while you're taking Bard's journey? So in this example, as the Bard makes his journey on this wall, whether it's just my passive or with my W on, it'll still be spinning around me and hit any enemy units around me as well. But let's next test this with Bard's Journey and Aurelion Sol's Q, and as he makes it, I use the Q and I go right through the portal, and it's still following me. I'm able to keep up with it and obviously make it bigger. So both of the abilities do synergize with Bard's Journey. The next question is asking about the interaction with Aurelion Sol's E and his passive with Skarner, Azir, Sion, and Poppy ultimates. So let's start things off by testing it with Azir ultimate. As I prepare to use my E ability and start flying over the river, Azir uses the ultimate, and as the soldiers come out, they do end up stopping me and pushing me backwards. Alright, but what if Azir's soldiers are already standing there? Can I then fly over them? As we set up that exact scenario, the answer unfortunately is still no. But is there anything that Aurelion Sol can fly over? So in this example, we'll test it with Poppy's ultimate. And as the dragon takes flight, well, I mean, the hammer is still gonna be more than enough to stop him. But what about Sion ultimate? Can the creator of galaxies be able to fly over some undead warrior? Well, the answer is still no. And as a bit of a bonus, will Aurelion Sol lose his passive if he gets ulted by Skarner? And as the ultimate finally goes off, the answer is yes, and the passive will stop for the duration of Skarner's ultimate. Moving on to the next question, will Aurelion Sol's passive or W proc Banshee's Vell? So first, let's test to see what happens with just the passive ability, and it does seem like it will pop the Banshee's Vell. And as I'm sure you can guess, even with the W on, the exact same thing happened. So it seems like Aurelion Sol has a fairly easy method of popping Banshee Veils. The next question is asking, can you charge his Q while being in Tahm Kench's W? This one isn't necessarily practical, but it's still very interesting to say the least. As I throw out my Q ability, Tahm Kench devours me, pops his ghost, and starts chasing the little galaxy I am forming. We couldn't get really far because it just goes too fast, but either way, it is very possible. And on to the next question, if a champion follows a star in a circle, will they consistently keep getting damaged by it? So in this example, you're going to be watching the Tahm Kench walk on the same star in a circle around me, and every single rotation it seems like he gets hit by the same star about 3 times. So you won't be taking damage every single second, but you also won't be taking a damage from 1 star per full orbit, which I have to say is actually surprisingly interesting. The next one is asking, can Aurelion Sol smite while he is in his E form for the ultimate drive-by smite? Okay. Yeah.
Oh, you want to kill me in the video, JT?
And the final question is something stated within the tooltip of his passive, but I still feel like a lot of people will be asking this. Can you see Aurelion Sol's orbs flying if he's within a bush? So obviously Aurelion Sol has these big stars orbiting around him, and if you were to walk in a bush, as you see in this example right here, you still see the stars, therefore giving away his position. So if you're trying to play assassin mode Aurelion Sol, well, this is definitely something you want to remember. But that is about it for this League of Myth episode featuring Aurelion Sol. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure to hit that like button, share this with your friends, check out the previous episodes of this series and my other videos as well, and subscribe if you haven't. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.